We are back with episode 120 of Dynasty Decisions, where we break down your fantasy football teams, your rosters, your contending teams, your rebuilding teams, your orphans that you take over, everything and anything Dynasty fantasy football is what we break down on this channel and on these episodes. Of course, if you want guaranteed access to these episodes, Flock Fantasy subscribers using promo code FSE can skip the line. Mother flockers, and then we get down to some free submissions if we have a chance. So before we get into this video, as always, let's hit the intro. All right, so the first team that we're going to kick this video off with is from Dakota, 10-team PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown league, super flex format, Will Levis, Aiden O'Connell, Sam Darnold, not very good at quarterback, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson somehow at running back, Zamir White, Jerome Ford, Chase Brown, and others there, 2 Chase Browns apparently, Brandon Ayuk, Dontavian Wicks, Rashid Shaheed, Wandale Robinson, Michael Wilson at wide receiver, Dalton Kincaid as the main tight end. This is almost the complete antithesis of how you and I build teams, where it's very running back heavy, very light at wide receiver and quarterback. It does look like he has not had his rookie draft yet by the looks of it. 102, 103, 204, 302, and 303 listed there. 3 early first rounders in 2025, including an early second rounder, and then a bunch of extra 2026 ones as well. So Dakota says, I inherited what was honestly a good team, but I take pride in doing things myself and strip the roster completely to the studs. 2025 firsts are from bottom 3 finishers this year, including himself. So that's why he has them all listed as early there. He said 101 has the 103, and the guy who finished in draft spot 103 doesn't have a first in the foreseeable future. So, I mean, when you look at this team, we'll talk about some of the trades that he has listed here and kind of the direction of it. Obviously, I kind of just made reference to, we don't really build teams like this. What would the direction that you would kind of take in the rookie draft and then going forward with this team?
I mean, just looking at the team right now, obviously, again, given the Superflex format, having just Will Levis there isn't going to cut it. But at the same time, having 2 of the top 3 picks is going to help you on your way this year. The way I kind of analyze this team, like you said, being set at running back, being set at tight end, being weak at wide receiver and quarterback, definitely not how we would have structured it. But regardless, having 3 future 2025 ones and 3 2026 ones, not to mention, like you said, the guy who finished with the little 103 this year, I'm assuming you said doesn't have a first in the foreseeable future. I don't know if you have his 26 one. I know you do have his 25 one, but knowing that he doesn't have a first for a while and his team is bad enough to get the 103, that's probably looking like the early favorite to finish 101 next year.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, this year in the rookie draft, the saving grace is that you have 102 and 103. And I don't know if Marvin Harrison's going to go 101. It's a 10-team superflex. It's possible that he goes 101 and you get gifted a Caleb Williams share at 102. Regardless, I think worst case scenario, you grab Marvin Harrison and Drake May with this team and you're, off and running. Build out your wide receiver core. The other thing that you could do is potentially try and trade up for Caleb Williams. If it's just a quick pick swap from 103, potentially, maybe you could secure both Caleb and Marvin by just swapping up from 103 to 101.
If it's cheap enough, I would explore, but at the same time, I wouldn't press it. I would honestly see, if he's like, yeah, I want 103 plus one of those early projected 25 ones. It's like, yeah, it's probably fair on face value, but at the same time, given the position of your team, I would rather bank the extra dart throws, the extra high liquidity picks that you have on your roster like you currently have. So if it's too costly, like if it's, like I said, 103 plus an extra first that you have in the future, I would probably withhold from that. The one thing I will say, like Corey said, if Marv goes 101, the direction I would go would be Caleb Williams plus Malik Neighbors. If Caleb Williams goes 101, I would go with Marvin Harrison plus Drake May. So you kind of have your opportunity bundles kind of linked together depending what the 101 does.
Yeah, and also, it's not out of the realm of possibility that you could trade down from 103 and still get Drake May at 105, 106 if somebody wants to come and get Neighbors. I know a lot of market value indicates that Neighbors and Odunze would both go over Drake May, or if you don't have a preference between May and Daniels or even maybe McCarthy, you could trade down the board if Caleb's not there for you. So a lot of potential directions you could go in. I will say, it would be smart if you got your quarterbacks in this year's rookie class, because that you also have the 204 and in a 10-team league. I mean, that's the 202.
Bo Nix.
Bo Nix or Michael Penix should be available to you at that point. I would make sure you have 3 QBs after this rookie draft going forward into the future,
including Levis.
2025, including Will Levis. In 2025 and 2026, Not quite sure what the quarterback class is going to look like, so I probably wouldn't rely on those classes to get your quarterback position locked down. Hopefully, you could ideally 2025 class comes around, you can knock out Luther Burden, Tet McMillan, and an elite running back, and potentially be in a house money season if you hit on your quarterback position. So make sure to prioritize quarterback in this year's rookie class is definitely the piece of advice that I would stick with.
Yeah, I would definitely say 103 plus 204, depending what the board looks like, could be your quarterback spots. I mean, at the end of the day, though, with the 102 and the 103, I am making sure 10 team start 9 format, I am leaving with one of Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors, because quite frankly, you need a lot of work at the wide receiver position. Again, having those early 2025 ones, who knows? Maybe you pocket, like Corey was saying, Luther Burden plus Tet McMillan, and the spot looks, a lot better. But for a start 9 format, having only really Brandon Ayuk of note as a starting caliber player, that's the next area of weakness that we have to patch.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, ideally you walk out of this rookie draft with, say, Caleb Williams, Malik Neighbors, and Bo Nix at 204, and you feel good about both your quarterback and your wide receiver position a little bit better, at least going forward into 2025. Yep. Some of the trades he has listed here, and then we can move on to the next team. He sent away Joe Burrow. He got the 201 in 2024, 2025 1 and 2, or sorry, 2025 and 2026 1. I'm assuming those are both early because he has all listed early first year. Probably the guy that he's mentioning had the 103 or whatever, and then a 2025 third for Burrow. So assuming those are both kind of like early to mid first rounders in a 10-team league to move off of Burrow. I love Burrow, but I think that was a pretty decent package. Again, doesn't really fit your team quite as well as those other younger players would. So that's kind of the rationale there.
Yeah, I mean, I love this move. Like you said, you have so much work to do at the wide receiver position that ultimately, it hurts, losing a stud quarterback, losing your quarterback one. But at the same time, knowing that you now have 6 future firsts of liquidity, like we were mentioning earlier, the 2 firsts this year to potentially add like a Drake May to help ease the pain, banking those extra picks. I'm doing that every single time. Like Corey said, he doesn't simply fit your window. So prolonging your window a little bit more to the point where your 2025, your 2026 will come into play when you're ready to contend, that's the best place to be. The other thing I will say, again, if we're combining these next 2 deals, it's kind of like an eyesore because, like you acquire Sam Howell and then you ended up trading him away later in the season, but it ended up working out completely well for you. It's just funny that both quarterbacks involved are actually now on the same team. Being able to move 3 seconds plus Geno Smith for Howell plus the 110. Again, I would probably equate Geno Smith plus a second into the 110. So it's basically Geno Smith plus a second, 110. So that cancels out. And then in this instance, it would be Howell for the 2 seconds. But Howell, you ended up flipping for 2 1s and 2 2s and a 1. So if you're combining these 2 deals, if I'm trying to math it out right now, it's what? 110, 2026 first plus a second basically for Geno Smith and a third is what it equates to.
Yeah, no, I think you definitely, like, November 22nd, 2023, you sold Howell like right at the perfect time, I think. Yeah. So that was definitely a good one. He said he made some other bad trades, which obviously probably didn't materialize as well. But overall, I think you've done a good job. I think you kind of know your direction. Again, be active and be strategic during the rookie draft would be my last piece of advice. But I think we can move on probably to the next team here of this video. We have from Eli, another 10-team PPR Superflex League. Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, J.J. McCarthy as the main quarterbacks, Trey Benson, Marshawn Lloyd. A lot of 0 RB type of dudes there at running back, but Malik Neighbors, Drake London, JSN, Jaden Reed, Brian Thomas Jr., Rashee Rice, Dontavian Wicks, and others at wide receiver. Dalton Kincaid as the main tight end with Ben Sinnott there in the wings, and then 4 2025 first rounders, an extra 2 and an extra 3. So very well built, well constructed team. You got your quarterbacks locked down. You got your wide receiver position pretty much locked down. All that's really left to do in 2025 is add the very elite running back class we're about to get, and you're going to be off to the races. This is a house money team. This is where you're at. I mean, he said this is a startup. I don't know how the hell you ended up with this team in a startup, but this is, this is definition of taking, advantage of your buffoon league mates, I would say.
He says here, obviously went rebuild out of the gate. Straight up, we're talking about a rebuild because the players are young, I guess. That's what like a rebuild would be. But I mean, you have, what is that? Caleb Williams is a top 8 overall startup player in my rankings. Trevor Lawrence and Malik Neighbors, both second rounders. Drake London, JJ McCarthy, third rounders. Like, you're going across the board, and just the overall value you're able to accumulate in this startup is absurd. I don't know how you got these screaming values in each round of your draft while also banking 3 extra ones.
Yeah, this is very clearly a redraft centric market. If I had to guess, there was probably, Drake London probably went like the 6th round behind Stephon Diggs, given the market that this league was probably operating. He said, basically he's trying to make moves. He's tried going to get Marvin Harrison Jr., Romo Dunze, other like elite wide receiver assets that fit his build. He said, is my best course of action just to ride out the season and reevaluate during next off season? I mean, midway through the year, you might have a, inflection point where like maybe Benson's the guy there in Arizona, or Khalil Herbert has some value because he gets traded or something like that. You could potentially be in a spot where mid-season you're actually looking to compete. But I would say being patient with this one's the smart route for sure.
Yeah, judging from the league market with how you got such value on your team and how picks were, I'm assuming, basically being tossed around, because it doesn't look like, if you told me this team actually was like missing a second, a third, or missing a future first, I would believe you, because that's how loaded it is in terms of overall appreciating value. So that tells me that firsts are very devalued in this market. So yeah, it might be tempting in season. Oh, crap. Let's just say Joe Mixon's the RB11 in fantasy and that late projected one. Fuck it. I want to throw at Joe Mixon. It's like, I wouldn't, simply because you can just monopolize next year's class and not only have a team that can compete next year, but downright have a team that, again, you said everybody's in it for the long time because you're all buddies. Guess what? You'll be making some money off these guys for a long time if you play the course.
Yeah, I mean, the trades he made here, Tank Dell, Sam Laporta, and a 4th for Dalton Kincaid, Rashee Rice, and Michael Pittman Jr. I mean, I love Sam Laporta and Tank Dell, but I think that was a good return. Selling Pittman for a 1st, Blake Corum and Jared Wiley for a 1st is insane. I don't know where the hell you got that. He said that one, no clue how this got in my inbox is what he said. Like, that is one of those gifts from God that you got in your inbox right there. So definitely just take that and run. Deshaun Watson, Zach Moss, Amir White, Braylon Allen for JJ McCarthy, Trey Benson, and a 3rd. Again, just lean into the young players, into the uncertainty, and take the value there. Jonathan Brooks, you were able to sell for a 1 and 2 as well. So, I mean, I look at in totality, all these trades just represent to me is that, yeah, it might be tempting to go sell a 1st for a running back midseason, but you're probably better off come 2025 spending those picks, getting rookie running backs, and being just a monster going forward.
Yeah, where did you put the sheep after you fleeced it?
Because yeah, no, literally, this is one of those teams where you just thank your lucky stars you were able to build up this kind of a pick bank and just have fun next year in the 2025 draft.
So I just got to point one thing out. I can picture this guy thinking, "Oh, I really want Blake Corum on my team. Oh, is it worth giving the 1st straight up for him? I don't know. Maybe I'll ask for a Jared Wiley as the plus."
Yeah, Jared Wiley being the plus there to get that done is pretty funny. I'm not going to lie. So, yeah, I mean, I trust whatever you do is going to be the right decision based on your assessment of this league market. I think you kind of know what you're doing at this point in time. So we could probably move on to the next team here, which is from Dead Show Dynasty. Mentions that there's some listeners of ours in this league. So we might have to skim through this a second here and determine what we actually want to reveal about his draft strategy. Anyways, 10-team half PPR, 6 point per passing touchdown. A lot of 10 teams in this video here. Super flex league. Joe Burrow, Tua, Baker Mayfield as the quarterbacks. Kyron Williams, Tony Pollard as the main running backs there. Christian Watson, Calvin Ridley, 102 Marvin Harrison he lists here. 103 Malik Neighbors he lists here. David Njoku, Cole Kmet at tight end. And then he has other draft picks listed. I'm assuming he made trades most likely to move up from his current draft picks. And then 2025 and 2026 looks like he has everything minus his 2nd in 25 and his 4th in 26. So I'll let you kind of break this down because there's a lot of text that we have to sort through before we give away too much.
Yeah, I'm trying. Basically, what he says here, I think some people in my league watch your channel. Please, as best as possible, don't discuss the names I'm considering later. Early on, I think it's fine because, I mean, he submitted this on July 5th. It's currently July 8th when we're recording this. This should be going live July 9th. So I'm assuming, again, I don't want to like how in depth should I go? Because he does mention, potential decision points at the 105, 107. How in depth should I go here?
So, I mean, I'm not going to talk about any of the late guys he's talking about here
Agreed.
for sure, because he said, don't reveal my late round sleepers. I definitely will not.
No, we won't.
Although, I mean, if they're the same late round sleepers of your league mates, it probably won't matter anyway.
Especially if they're all watching us.
Yeah, he said, as it stands now, he's drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors with his first 2 picks. He said Romo Dunze has gone off the board at the 104 and Caleb went at 101. He re-rolled JSN into the 105, so he still does have the 105. And again, I'm not going to say who he plans on taking, but I agree that's the guy that you should take. 106, he says, will probably be a quarterback of some kind. And then basically he says at 107, he feels like he's going to have a good value either at whatever quarterback falls and or Brock Bowers or Xavier Worthy. So, I mean, just again, we're just skimming through your draft strategy, not to give away too much. This is the first time I think this has ever happened where someone's like, don't say what I plan to do on the video. But looking at what you have listed here, I agree with pretty much everything that you have listed.
Yeah, agreed. Again, like we can't unveil too much. This may not be the greatest watch for people that are completely uninformed with what's going on right now, but it's kind of like we're speaking Morse code to you. What's going on here? All jokes aside, it's funny you mentioned like, oh, people in my league watch it, so try to like conceal some stuff because like a couple times actually, like we've talked about teams in Dynasty Decisions, and somebody like would DM me like, oh, he's in my league. Now I know what he's doing.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I mean, for future reference, it probably would have been more beneficial for you to book a consult or to get a team review so that we didn't actually have to reveal this on Dynasty Decisions. But again, that is all available on Flock Fantasy as well. The trades that he ended up making, we can go over these, obviously, because they've already happened. A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley in a third. He received the 101 and 301 in this deal. He didn't end up spending the 101, but essentially balancing out that deal, it's Caleb Williams and, a third-round dart throw for A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley.
Heartbeat.
I don't say it's a heartbeat. I think AJ Brown and Barkley for a competitive team are a great assets to have, but I do prefer Caleb.
Yeah, Caleb or Marv, heartbeat. Because the way I'm evaluating this, again, based on my rankings, it's would you give up? I believe I have
like an early third rounder for AJ Brown, and then probably like around 5-ish pick for Saquon Barkley.
For my a guy that I think I have, I believe 111 in my dynasty rankings right now with Marv. Yeah, I'm doing that every time.
Yeah, and Caleb.
Or Caleb, yeah, I have at 108. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So 106 actually. I did move Caleb up. He is my 106.
Yep. So then we got 101. He sells Caleb and AT Perry for the 102, 305, and a fourth. Again, I guess this is just I don't have a preference between Caleb and Marv type of trade. Would have liked to get a little bit more than this. But if you were going to take Marvin 1, it's a 10-team league. It's probably what he was going to end up doing. You at least got something for it. Yeah. You pocket a 305 and a fourth. So I think it's better than nothing.
You know what we call that? What do we call that?
Diligence.
Doing your due diligence, baby. If Ethan's in the chat, you can comment that down below, and I know you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you sold off JSN, like you said, and the 301 for the 105 and the 405. Yeah, re-rolling JSN into a potential franchise quarterback, I'm not going to say which one, is definitely a good option to do there.
Yeah, for sure. But overall, I think you're pretty set up. You have the basis of this team. Again, we talked a little bit about the draft decisions. Honestly, exactly how you laid it out looks completely fine to me. You still have those future picks barring your 2025 second loaded up there. Overall, good team. Keep adding to it. You have a good head on your shoulders.
Yeah. Let's roll on to Mystery Meat's team here. He's got also quick shout out to Mystery Meat. He shouts out our Manscaped partnership, which I guess we've helped them out in the Manscaped region here. Mystery Meat has a 12-team, first 12-teamer of the video, 6-point per passing touchdown, single quarterback with Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray as the QBs, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, Chase Brown, number of other guys at running back, Marvin, Drake London, Jalen Waddle, Michael Pittman, Jordan Addison, and others at wide receiver, and then Trey McBride, Pat Freiermuth as the tight ends. Doesn't look like he's had any picks in 2024. Maybe he already spent them. It looks like he already spent them. And then in 2025 has an extra one here. So what are your thoughts on this team? He says he's looking to contend this year.
Yeah. Just quickly addressing that line about the promo code Bush on Manscaped. Hey, there's less mystery to that meat now, baby. Rock on.
Literally.
All jokes aside, looking at the team, Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray in a one quarterback league, I believe you said.
Yeah, one quarterback league. So that's more than fine, I would say. And like you said, he's trying to contend this year. Somehow ended up with the entire Colts wide receiving core, which is hilarious. So he said he's going to try and sell one of those guys. I would try and sell A.D. Mitchell. That's the person that I would sell. But Michael Pittman also makes sense.
That's the one I would sell.
Expensive that you could sell as well. Yep. And you could just transition him into, like, say, T. Higgins, who's kind of relatively in the same tier.
Yeah, another one too, like potentially, again, we could look into the specifics. Again, you'll know your league market well, but can you get like Deebo Samuel plus? I'd be cool with doing something like that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And he mentioned, should I try and trade Marvin? I mean, you have Kyler, dude. I probably wouldn't be looking to trade Marvin.
Keep him.
Where you're at, especially, like a 10-team, one quarterback league, we're talking a top 5 startup pick. So, I mean, if you can get one of the top other receivers straight for Marvin, sure. But, like, you're probably not going to. You'd have to pay something on top of them.
a guy in Marvin who, as a rookie, is currently going off the board as the wide receiver 9 over on Underdog as a 1-2 turn pick. So if you're worried about the redraft slash overall season long point equity of Marvin Harrison Jr., I'd be shocked if he didn't finish at least as a top 15 receiver. And I think the projection, honestly, is a top 10 guy.
Yeah, maybe he's worried about having the onslaught Cardinals right there with Marvin, Trey McBride, and Kyler. But hey, if the Cardinals are good this year, you're going to be in a really good spot. So
Yeah.
I would be fine just holding Marvin, though, to answer your question.
Yeah, I mean, you're making the consolidated bet that the Cardinals will be league winners based off their ADP. And to be honest, based off the projected that offense, I don't think that's outlandish at all.
Yeah, I mean, Kyler's the one that in terms of like a redraft standpoint, I feel the most comfortable betting on. I think it's baked into Marvin and Trey McBride's prices that they're going to be really good positional advantages. But regardless, I still feel pretty good about holding that stack.
For sure. So he does say listed here. Again, we'll go through some of the trades as well. And then he has a couple listed at the top here we'll get into in a second. But just going off the trades that are listed in chronological order on the graphic, 102 plus 206 plus 25 second for 101. Again, context, 12 team start, 8 format, goes up and pays up for Marvin Harrison Jr. You can make the case that if you view Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison even playing field, that you would actually prefer the side of the 2 seconds. But at the same time, knowing the market stronghold that Marvin Harrison Jr. has, knowing the cost difference in terms of redraft this year, Marv is a 1-2 turn pick, Malik Neighbors more as a mid-third. To pay up and get added point equity this year in a one quarterback 12-man start 8 league, I'm cool with this move.
Yeah, I'm absolutely fine with that move, especially to get the stack there as well. Sells off Hollywood, JSN 206, 310, and 401 for Brandon Cooks, Calvin Ridley, and the 106. Again, it is a 1 quarterback 106. So it's not quite as valuable. Again, maybe you paid a little bit too much, but I do love the corresponding move where you sold off the 106 and the 108 for Breece Hall in a position where you're looking to contend. I mean, Breece Hall for 106 and 108 are late first, early second round valuations in Superflex, and I would pay definitely like Superflex 111 and 201 for Breece Hall any day of the week. So I do like the move. I mean, Breece Hall is like a top 8 startup pick in a 1 quarterback league, so I would definitely be fine with that.
There's more context. I was making the iffy face on the second deal, but he actually does have context that he overpaid for the 106 going into it with the thought that the Breece Hall trade would be available. And as you can see, they were made on the same day. So basically what I'm assuming, it's probably similar to what happened when we made the Jamar Chase deal, where you said, hey, like if you can get up to Keon Coleman, we'll do the deal. I ended up shopping, I think, my 205 plus a 25 third for the 203. Again, you could argue on face value, 205 plus a 2025 third for the 203. That's a very, very good deal to move down from 203. But knowing the context for me that you would have needed Keon Coleman to make that trade, that's why I would be overpaying in one deal to make a different trade. So I understand what you're able to do here.
Yeah, and that was the deal where I gave you Jamar Chase and Jahan Dotson. You gave me Garrett Wilson, DJ Moore, and Keon Coleman in that deal. So, yeah, I mean, I think you've done a good job of trading so far. He said he also traded an early first for Josh Jacobs, but later on draft day, I traded him to another team for an early first. So I don't know why you did that. Maybe you just think that other guy's team is worse. And again, hopefully you knew that ahead of time, because the initial trade of trading an early 1 for Josh Jacobs was probably not a good one. But again, if you knew you were just going to go ahead and turn around and maybe you had a bet with the guy that his team was going to be better than the other guy's team or whatever, I don't know. But I think you're an early one. You had an early one regardless, so it doesn't really matter.
That's freaking hilarious, by the way. It's like, this guy's got the early one that'll probably finish 104. Let me take my chance with this guy that his finishes 101 or 102.
Yeah, again, I hope that you knew that guy was going to be willing to do that for Josh Jacobs. But I mean, knowing the league market that you're in, it is going to be more challenging to compete, I would say. Knowing that like Josh,
you got a good team
too, going for early ones, but you do have a really, really good team. I mean, you got 2 absolute studs at running back. You have a difference-making quarterback. You have good wide receivers, probably not elite wide receivers. There's probably guys in your league with better receivers, but your running back core 1-2 punch is probably the best in your league, and you have a difference-making tight end and quarterback. So I think you're probably in a very good spot to compete this year. Plus, you got an extra 1 next year to help build that out even further.
Yeah, I think you're in a good spot here. Like we said, just keep doing what you're doing. In terms of your questions, I believe we answered all of them. You said you narrowly missed the playoffs last year. Well, guess what? Now you add Marvin Harrison Jr., Breece Hall, etc. to the core. So, I would say playoffs is a very fair estimate for this team.
Yeah, especially when you consider just from like an underdog fantasy standpoint, you got Breece, Gibbs, Marvin, Drake London, Waddle, all second round or better redraft picks. And then, Pittman and McBride and Addison and all those guys that are kind of like mid rounders. You should be in a really, really good spot. So let's move on to Ashlyn Bailey's team here. We have won the championship in this league last season, apparently. So 12-team PPR, best ball, 4-point per passing touchdown, half tight end premium, super flex league. Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa are the top 2 quarterbacks there. Kenneth Walker, James Conner, Ezekiel Elliott, and those type of guys at running back. Tyreek Hill, Drake London, Malik Neighbors, Josh Downs, Mike Williams, and others at wide receiver. Trey McBride, and pretty much nothing else at tight end. Team's a little bit shallow, I would say, for a best ball format, but you do have an extra 1 in both of the next 2 draft classes and an extra 2 in 2025 as well. So this one's kind of like one of those teams that's a little bit halfway in, halfway out, because you have players like Tyreek Hill who are obviously like you only hold if you're trying to compete with players like that. But you also have like extra pick equity to the point that I might consider pivoting this team into one that makes a little bit more sense one way or another, whether it's the type of league format and market that you're in where you can get good production on the cheap because people value picks very highly, or vice versa. People value players and production highly, and you could pivot off of a Tyreek Hill for say 2 first-round picks or whatever the case is. You could pivot off of a Kenneth Walker, a James Conner, anybody that's going to give immediate short-term value for draft capital. So that would be my first piece of advice, is like make a decision on what you're doing this year.
Yeah, and stand firm to that decision, because I see multiple times people make a decision and then kind of have, cold feet about the decision they made a couple weeks later and try to patchwork, band-aid the quote-unquote errors in their mind that they made. You have to make an informed decision. Okay, you mentioned there are 3 clear front runners in this league. Put this team into the My Teams feature over on Flock. See how you compare both in terms of value, in terms of point equity this year, and make the determination. Am I closer to these 3 front runners or closer to the other 7 teams in this league? If the answer is the latter, you have to get busy, like Corey said. And I understand you do say here you've tried to move Tyreek Hill into Nico plus, Ayuk plus, Olave, Waddle plus, Higgins, etc. If you do deem that this is a team that you want to retool and you want to potentially push your winning window more so to 2025, 2026, at that point, yeah, ideally, would you want a younger receiver plus maybe, a pick for Tyreek? Absolutely. But if that's not what the market is, you, like Corey said, you might have to be willing to accept 2 1s for Tyreek Hill. You might be willing to accept, can you get like seconds for James Conner / Ezekiel Elliott once the season starts? Like, that's how I'd be approaching this. Because like you said, you ran a little bit hot. You won the championship last year. I think a year after the championship, when everybody in your league knows that those players were on your championship team, is actually the perfect year to start your retool, because everybody in their minds is like, fuck, I lost to him in the semifinal because Tyreek Hill dropped 36 points on me, or I lost to him in the championship because James Conner ran in a touchdown. Again, I don't actually remember certain point scoring weeks in the season, but basically what I'm trying to say is that theme, that inherent bias of losing to players on your team will make them more likely to want to acquire them from you, especially when they see that basis of production. Again, maybe you're unlikely to sell Tyreek Hill right now, but if he goes out there, again, wide receiver 2 off the board over on Underdog, he goes out there the first 3 weeks of the year, 22 PPR points per game, 9 targets per game on the number 6 Miami offense in the league. Like, you're going to be able to get exactly what you want for him at that point.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're just going to have to be patient with these guys. It is sometimes hard to sell a Tyreek Hill type for the value that you want for him,
especially now.
And until he's playing games, like sometimes it's hard to get what you want to get for him. In a best ball format, man, Tyreek Hill should be very valuable. So once he's putting up a monster game at the beginning, like in September, we know the Dolphins are just monster team in September. They might be the best offense in the league through 4 games. So I don't anticipate that you're going to have a very hard time selling Tyreek Hill early on in the season. But again, if the Ayuk plus or the Nico plus deals aren't there, maybe you buy low on Romo Dunze after the first couple weeks of the season and get a first-round pick in 2026 attached to Romo Dunze to move off of Tyreek.
Yeah, I mean, that might be ambitious, getting a first on Odunze.
But if it's week 3 and Odunze is running 40% of the routes, it might not be that ambitious.
Yeah, I mean, you could absolutely try it. Maybe in that deal, you would attach like a James Conner or Ezekiel Elliott, so the guy feels like he's getting win now production back. That'd probably be a little bit more attainable. But regardless, like Corey said, some of the players on your team, their best time to sell are quite literally once everybody starts getting reminded of how dominant they are.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, some of the deals that you made so far, Lamb and Mayfield for Malik Neighbors, Drake London, and Kendre Miller. And you want dudes back. When you're selling CeeDee Lamb, you want dudes back. And I think Malik Neighbors and Drake London could absolutely be dudes for you. Definitely taking a little bit of risk here, but I like the move. Travis Kelce, Debo Samuel, and Zach Moss, you sell off
Smash.
for a first in 2025, an early projected first in 2026, and then a mid projected second in 2025. I think that was pretty good value. I mean, Kelce and the late first cancel each other out. I mean, the early one versus Debo and Moss pretty much cancel out, and then you just got a free second out of it. And then you sell off Jerome Ford for an early second, makes sense. And then he has some offers on the table as well. I mean, Josh Palmer for an early second is the easiest accept I've ever seen in my life.
I think it's a full offer. So Palmer, Connor plus Miller for the 2 twos. Regardless, cash in.
Yeah, if that's the offer, for some reason it looks like it's Palmer for the early 2 and then Connor and Miller for the late 2. But if it is the whole offer, I would definitely take the seconds in your position because you're looking to offload that kind of production. And then again, you'd still have some work to do if you do make that deal. You got to sell off potentially Ezekiel Elliott and Tyreek and maybe anybody else. Mike Williams
maybe has some appeal.
Yeah, like there's going to be guys that have appeal on your team for sure.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if you can keep adding to that pick counter, already having 2 firsts in 2025, 2026, multiple firsts in 2025, if you can keep banking those picks, potentially retooling this team for the next 1 to 2 years, and then redeveloping your championship window. The other move, again, I'm not just going to suggest this. Obviously, you're going to need your full market value to actually make this maneuver, but can you transition Joe Burrow into a younger quarterback?
Yeah, 2 of 2. Like if you could transition Burrow into Anthony Richardson, or you could transition Burrow into Caleb Williams, or even, I mean, if you're willing to take the risk, you could transition Burrow into Drake May plus a lot of picks or something like that. You could definitely get away with it. And then maybe Tua can transition into JJ McCarthy plus or something like that. Yeah,
no, that would be a very, very fine spot to go. Overall, again, you say you feel stuck in this league. You feel stuck right now because you're not seeing the market bite at some of your vet players, but it's July. And typically speaking in July, I mean, I'll tell you right now, sometimes, I won't check my fantasy app. I won't see my sleeper in July. Guess what? Once it comes August, I am on that thing every freaking day. So it's just a matter of once people are more attentive on the app. Again, we do this full time. And in July, we're more so making content, enjoying our time out. And then once August starts rolling around is when you start preparing some of your offers going into the season. Once you have full clarity on some of the redraft, some of the, in this case, best ball projection for these guys.
Yeah, and we don't have lives. Other people mostly have lives and kids and families and stuff. So that's basically the difference between us and other people. And sometimes, like you said, we're not even the most attentive this time of year. And on my competitive teams too, like, do I want to buy somebody now? Like, probably not. Like, I want to wait until as close to the season as I humanly can, or even potentially in the season once I know what my team kind of looks like. So, like I said, you're going to have to be patient with this team, but as the deals present themselves, you might have an opportunity to be able to transition into better team situation than you're currently in right now, but just be patient. So let's move on to Sammy's team here. Second year post startup, he says 12 team, half PPR, 6 point per passing touchdown, also some point per carry and half wide receiver premium and kind of tiered PPR type of look here. Super flex league as well. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers definitely feels good. Travis Etienne, James Cook, Jonathan Brooks, and others at running back. Marvin, Tyreek, Drake London, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, Jermaine Burton at wide receiver, Sam Laporta, Pat Freiermuth, and others at tight end. And then a couple extra picks, extra second in 2026, an extra 1 and 2 extra 2s in 2025. So competitive team. I would say you could definitely win a championship with this thing. And you also have some pick liquidity built up to make moves or just to kind of replenish talent in 2025. So very strongly built team here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, having, we talked about all last year, the gold standard, and obviously Kyle Pitts was the reference player every time we made it, but you quite literally have the gold standard across the board on this team. You have the quarterbacks 1 and 2, the gold standard of super flex position. You cannot physically get any better at your quarterback and super flex spots than you currently have with those 2 on the roster. So anytime you see that, you already know you're in for a fun time just evaluating the team. Not to mention, again, Laporta, I guess you can call him the new gold standard at the tight end position, which kind of pains me because obviously Kyle Pitts is my guy, but we got to be real here. Rookie tight end doing what he did. He is the gold standard at tight end at this current point. Having both, young appreciating assets at your flex positions with also, some win now equity with guys like Tyreek Hill. I mean, you're in a good spot regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. And he says he went with a true 1-year punt out of the startup last year, and he ended up with a lot of, good players and a lot of picks. Felt like there was only a couple true contenders, and the reigning champ was selling everything, is what he said. Rome went 105, which really screwed things up for him, as he was only looking to move 108 and 111 to go up and get there. And he said he couldn't really get a young wide receiver with the 106. So he ended up trading it basically away in the Tyreek Hill deal by the looks of it. So let's go over some of these trades here. So on March 15th, he ends up selling the 103 and the 203, which became Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix, and then Rondell Moore, who cares, ends up trading up for Marvin Harrison Jr. and banking up Bo Nix's teammate Troy Franklin there. So again, 102 plus 212 for 103 plus 203 is actually very similar to one of the deals that I ended up making in one of my leagues as well. So I have no issue with that at all going up against Marvin.
Give me Marv, baby. Give me Marv.
Yeah, especially knowing that you already have Allen and Mahomes. Like, I mean, I think you can pass on quarterback talent there. I guess you could have made the argument that you just take Malik Neighbors and then you bank up another player at the 203 and take maybe Bo Nix yourself or something like that. But yeah, pretty solid move. April 4th, you end up doing the 208 you sell, 306 Jalen McMillan, and then James Conner and Zach Moss is what you received in that deal. Again, your team's competitive, so I get it, but I think this is kind of like a rushed move. There was it was April 4th when you made this deal. Like, did you need to sell a mid to late second and a mid third for James Conner and Zach Moss? Like, yeah, sure. Conner and Moss could be solid production pieces, but this is like I would rather sell 2025 picks, especially knowing that you have extras for these players in August than I would do it before the NFL draft. Cause like Moss and Conner could have got Conner did actually have a backfield mate added to his team, but Moss could have gotten nuked by a backfield mate.
Yeah, no, I agree with you in terms of the timing. However, I will say it is nitpicking to a certain degree. Yeah, like could you have, if you made this deal now, probably have only paid the 208 for both those guys? Probably, but they still have relatively decent redraft projections. Both of these guys are going in the top 11 rounds over on Underdog at this current point. So it's not like you're not getting production value back. You definitely are in this instance. And like to counteract what you were saying with, you'd rather give the 2025 picks. I honestly would rather hold those 2025 picks to potentially make an upgrade in season. Because to be honest, I think it's much more likely that you would be able to make an upgrade in season with those picks versus if you gave those picks at the draft, you wouldn't have that future flexibility. Because again, as much as I like Jalen Polk, as much as I like Jalen McMillan, I feel like on the open market, especially when you're making upgrade moves, the picks are easier to attach to players than those players would be on top of, let's just say it was Drake London plus a second to go up and get, I don't know, Puka Nacua because he's the wide receiver 6 and London's the wide receiver 13.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, the thing that bothers me about just some of these moves is that I get, going to get Tyreek for 106 Brock Bowers. You didn't need a tight end. It makes total sense. 108 JJ McCarthy, you go and get Travis Etienne. 212 Troy Franklin. I guess did you get James Cook for that, or is that all one deal? I think it's all one deal. So you got
106,
Bowers,
108,
McCarthy,
212.
and Franklin for Tyreek, Travis Etienne, and James Cook. Again, I think that's a great deal at face value. But your team is already young. So the thing that kind of irks me a little bit is like, I actually would have just loved to spend these picks and kind of let it play out, but I'm nitpicking here. I think that was a good trade that you made. 209 Ben Sinnott for Christian Watson. I think that was a good deal. I like Christian Watson there. 210 Jalen Wright and 403 Dylan Laube for a mid-second. That was a solid on the clock move, I'm assuming, during the rookie draft as well. So again, I'm nitpicking your deals a little bit just because I think the young funness of this team would have been awesome, but you got some great players and I think you got some good deals.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, again, like ideally, you want to draft all your young players and it develops into some of the teams we have built out. But at the same time, if he's saying like, hey, everybody's kind of overdoing it with the youth factor. And I will agree, like when I'm looking at some of these deals, like this is definitely a youth factor, pick factor type of league market. Because for example, I mean, some league markets, I'll see that 106, 108, 212 deal, like somebody would decline for Tyreek Hill straight up. You know what I mean? Like you can tell.
I mean, 106 for Tyreek is like in leagues that we play in where we love picks. And like, I would take Tyreek over 106 Brock Bowers and like 108 for Travis Etienne. I think that's a fair deal. I don't think it's like necessarily one way or another a huge win. And then 212 for James Cook. Obviously, like that was how it balanced out the deal, but James Cook is way more valuable than the 212.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, overall, you're definitely in a contending position now, having all those picks. Like I said, the underrated factor, and again, sometimes it's hard to make a win now team in some league markets out of a startup, knowing inherently that everybody will be spending picks willy-nilly and everybody will be getting rid of their 25s and 26. It's hard to make a comparative contender with all your future picks banked up. However, if you do take the house money route like you did, 1 year punt, build up the picks, still have this win now equity, I'm telling you right now, in season, you're going to thank yourself for holding those picks, those firsts, those seconds, those thirds, not even just specifically because you have more of a backfall, more of a backup. What's the term? when you have like a back,
you got like a break glass
plan.
in case your team gets injured or something situation where your 2025,
like a safety
it's like
net.
a backup plan. Yeah.
Safety
Net. There you
backup
go.
plan. Yeah, exactly. Right. You have one of those in the sense that, yeah, if things break wrong, you shall have the pick, listed here. But even if you start like 6-1, 7-1, and you want to go spending, you should be able to get quite the needle moving asset for those picks.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if we always say Christian McCaffrey manager is in a bad spot. Like,
One
I
and
mean,
a
you have the
one and a
assets
two.
to be able to go get Christian McCaffrey here.
Yeah, and people argue like, no, my league would never sell Christian McCaffrey for a 1 and 2. If Christian McCaffrey was the RB4 to start the year, and that manager who had Christian McCaffrey started, 2-4 in the season, and the rest of his team's kind of getting banged up, kind of getting hurt, who's to say he wouldn't say, you know what, as much as I love Christian McCaffrey, if I can liquidate now for a 1 and 2, I'm doing it every time. That we've seen that materialize so many times.
Most smart dynasty managers would at least be shopping him. Maybe they don't sell him for a 1 and a 2, but they'd at least be shopping him at that point in time. So we could probably move on to the last team of the video here, which is from John. 10 team. Yep. He has a tiered PPR listed here as well. Super flex format. Caleb Williams, Justin Herbert, Drake May, Justin Fields and other guys at quarterback, Trey Benson, Chase Brown, and others at running back, Marvin Harrison, Romo Dunze, T. Higgins, Ladd McConkey, and others at wide receiver, TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, other guys there at tight end. And he also has listed here a couple extra first rounders in 2025, a couple extra second rounders, third rounders in 2025, and an extra one in 2026. So it appears that this was a team right out of the startup. And he said productive struggle is kind of what his goal was coming out of the startup here. He said this is a year one focus league, so very redraft centric market is the league that he's drafting in.
I can tell from some of these deals.
I can tell from some of these deals. I can tell from the team that you've built up. I can tell from how many picks you have in addition to the team that you built up here. So yeah, he said he ended up with easily the highest amount of draft capital in the league with 10 teams and a few looking more heavily long-term. Picks weren't as easy in number to stack up. So he said he's pretty happy with that. So I guess he was just a really sharp trader and he was able to get a lot of these deals done where the picks were involved. And he said I also project Mitchell, Williams, Theo Johnson higher than some. So he got some of his guys there in the startup as well. And he said, would love to hear your thoughts on where I'm at and what my goals should be for this season and next, depending on outcomes, especially if things break into a best case scenario this year. Marvin's like a wide receiver one, Caleb and Herbert are dudes and all that kind of stuff. This is, he said, do I consider this accelerated house money with the young studs and seek to leverage my 2025 pick pool or kind of just like wait and see what happens? And he said, if it's more of a developmental year, do I try and turn the 2025 pick surplus into even more 2026 picks come draft season? I mean, if your league market allows for it, you could, but at the same time, I think even if you you ran cold this year and everybody's kind of developing and you don't really have a lot of production pieces. I mean, once you spend these 2025 picks, you should be a competitive team and probably one of the best in the league.
Wait, am I understanding the question correctly? Is it like, oh, should I turn my 2025s into more 2026s, aka just making my 2025 picks just a pyramid scheme for more picks?
I mean, you could. I mean, it depends on the returns that you're getting for these guys, but I like the guys at the top of the 2025 class enough. Like, we made reference to this in the rookie mock. It's like the flex production that you're getting out of these running back and wide receiver prospects in 2025. It's like, yeah, there's no Caleb Williams or whatever, but your team is in a position where you don't need those players anyway. So I would be much more likely to just spend those picks on Burden and Tet McMillan and Genty and Ollie Gordon and those type of guys.
I will say one thing, the two players that stick out to me as potential trade-out opportunity, especially knowing inherently that you're probably going to one-year punt this thing, is that first of all, once TJ Hawkinson comes back from injury, if he starts looking like prime TJ Hawkinson again, a little bit older at this point, I believe he's 27 years old. So if you can cash out for, pre-injury TJ Hawkinson prices, if he starts showing that ability again, I'd be willing to do that. And the other two, given the age of this team, again, a younger overall team with all those picks stockpiled up, if T. Higgins gets off to a really, really big start, like I understand it's like, oh, that's nitpicking. He's a 1999 born. Like he's still relatively young. I get that. But at the same time, if the offer on the table is a first and a second because he's averaging 16.5 PPR points per game to start the year, I'd be willing to do that. And the other one that sticks out to me, again, more so from a volatility standpoint rather than he's so old, get him off my team. But Jameson Williams is the flavor of best ball right now. He's getting pushed up to the 8th round right now. People have big expectations. We aren't the biggest believers in him for the long-term season. However, we can both acknowledge that the volatility he brings week to week, the spike week potential absolutely exists. He might be the type of player where if he has a 6-catch, 130-yard, 2-touchdown game and you can sell him for any type of first-round liquidity, again, it sounds crazy to think he will net a first at this current point, but I can see a scenario, again, young player shows a big ceiling game that somebody may be willing to overpay at some point in the year. Kind of similar to what we saw from Gabe Davis a few years ago.
Yeah, and I mean, 6 catches is like double more than he's ever had in one game combined. So I mean, it's probably not likely to happen, but yeah, I would be willing to sell him now for Christ's sakes. That's where I'm at with Jameson Williams. But I mean, you're obviously high enough on him that you were willing to take him at 10.07. So if you want to hold him, that's totally fine with me. He also has some trades listed here that he made during the startup where he's traded down 108 for 109 and he pocketed a 26 first rounder, which I mean, both you and I have Caleb Williams over Joe Burrow anyway. Yeah. So that's an easy deal that you smashed on that one. 211, 706, and 1711. You ended up trading away 4 spots, I guess, to move up for the startup 207, which was Justin Herbert. Yeah. And then you pocketed a 2025 2 out of that deal in a startup 1612 where you got Darnell Mooney. So, I mean, I think that's a really, really sharp move. You saw Herbert falling. I'm not even the biggest Herbert guy. I think he's the type of guy that I'd be willing to shop. But at 207, yeah, I think I'm absolutely willing to trade up for him.
Yeah, I was like looking at face value. Ooh, 211, 706, 1711, 207, 1612, 2025 second. But folks, this is why you always look at player tiers, player valuations, because when you see the picks, you're like, ooh, maybe I want the 2.7 and the 17 over the 2.16 and the 2025 second. But when you contextualize, again, as much as I love Malik Neighbors, there's a big difference between him and Justin Herbert. In fact, I would argue that the difference, because of the upside that Justin Herbert brings at the quarterback position, could honestly be comparable, in my opinion, to Neighbors plus Evans for Justin Herbert. So pocketing that second, Mooney for Cowing, who gives a crap, honestly. Like, pick your flavor amongst those two, to be honest.
I'm like a Mooney truther, so I actually really like Mooney this year. But yeah, and then 407 Isaiah Pacheco, you trade down from there and you get startup 607 T Higgins, who I prefer over Pacheco straight up, and then a 2025 first rounder and Justin Fields at 1202. Yeah, great moves. Yeah. It's very clear that your league mates are trying to win, and that's all they care about. So you obviously made mincemeat of them throughout the entire startup, and that's why you were able to build up the team you've built up. So don't get too cute. Don't say, oh, I'm going to sell all my 2025 picks or 2026 picks. Like, we're trying to win at some point here. So you got a good shell in 2025. Once you spend those picks, you're going to be in a very, very good spot. So that would be my initial strategy takeaways here.
And I will say, some people might be watching like, oh, you guys just love perpetually, moving back, getting more picks. At what point do you want to win? Trust me when I say, me and Corey don't not want to win. It's more so understanding the optimization of getting value for your picks and getting value for certain players at certain points, understanding that it's going to be cheaper in the short or like the sooner life cycle of your dynasty league to get these picks versus come 2 years in.
Yeah. Not to mention that, like, your team should tell you when you're ready to win. It's like your team isn't telling you that now, which is why I'm very much value focused. But once you start seeing the fruits of your draft picks and that kind of thing, it's like, you're going to be like, yeah, I actually don't want to give up on Luther Burden for 2 2026 first rounders. It's like, I just want Luther Burden with this team. You know what I mean? Like, that's, your team might come to a point where you just draft Luther Burden and you have the best receiving core in your league. So that's where I'm at with this team, is like, yeah, fruits of your labor, take your deals when they come off. On the table, like, you got Christian Watson has a couple spike weeks. You can sell him for a 1 and a 2 and you want to do it, by all means. But once you spend those 2025 picks, you're going to be probably competitive as soon as that happens.
Yep. No, I agree.
All right. So that is the end of this video. Again, if you guys did enjoy it, if you got some value from it, leave a like down below. As always, if you do want to be on future episodes of Dynasty Decisions, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you can join flockfantasy.com. With promo code FSE only, you get access to these videos, and you can submit down below in the Google form that we have listed there. Mother flockers get to skip the line completely. Flockers are ahead of the free submissions. And then if we have any time to get to free submissions, we do. Again, we haven't been able to get to so many free submissions in the last couple of videos, but we are trying our best to work through as many of the paid submissions as we can. So we could get to some free submissions up at some point. But again, easiest way to skip the line is just going to Flock Fantasy. You get tons of other content there too, including our redraft guide, which will be coming out tomorrow when you guys are listening to this, the first edition of it. Our redraft rankings manifesto 3.0 was a huge hit last year. So we ran it back, and we'll have a lot of the same features in that for those of you guys getting ready for your season-long drafts, as well as doing best ball drafts right now. So if that all interests you, links will be down below in the description. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.